I'll make a motion to approve those as well.
Second?
It's been moved by Mike, seconded by Dick. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Those minutes are approved. The Select Board will meet on the following dates. Regular meetings at 6 p.m. on Tuesday, December 22nd, 2011, and Tuesday, January 3, 2012. Work review sessions prior to the regular meetings will start at 5 p.m. All of the above meetings will be held in the Town Hall unless otherwise posted. Weather observations for the month of November are available in the Town Hall. A citizen is still needed to represent the town of Plymouth at the Genesis Behavioral Health Board. All town hall offices will be closed on December 26, 2011 in observance of the Christmas holiday. And all town offices will be closed on January 2nd, 2012 in observance of New Year's Day. Under agenda review, we do have an item to add under other business. That is the Bridgewater ambulance contract. We have no personnel appointments or updates, but under the safety building update and discussion, I would like to just add that at our last meeting, we discussed the possibility of having a delay in voting on the safety buildings. And one factor that wasn't mentioned at that meeting was PSU. A number of citizens have indicated that they believe PSU should play a greater role in the safety buildings. And while we believe this is a strong possibility, more time will be needed to pursue it. So that is another reason that we are looking at delay on the safety buildings. Under correspondence, we have a memo from the town of Sugar Hill, and this concerns the Northern Pass.
I'm just going to step away from the table.
Thank you. The subject line is a survey of towns affected by the Northern Pass. The town of Sugar Hill voted unanimously at their 2011 town meeting to oppose the Northern Pass project. The proposed route for Northern Pass would go along 7 miles of existing right-of-way in our town, and we are very concerned about the effects of massive towers on the unique beauty of our region, not to mention the negative impact on our property values and on our local businesses that are tied to tourism. Sugar Hill has sent a delegation to Governor Lynch to discuss our concerns. The Select Board has created a committee to study the Northern Pass, and our residents have created an active grassroots effort to raise awareness about the proposed project and what it would do to this region. We know that people all along the proposed route are equally upset, and we believe that we can all be more effective if we coordinate our activities. Together, we can have greater access to our elected officials, wider coverage in the press, and better inputs to both legislative and regulatory processes. The first step is to document what is going on. The attached questionnaire lists some of the actions we have taken, and we would be interested in knowing what you have done and what you would like to do. We would like to have feedback from all the towns along the proposed route so that we can document the extent of the opposition, encourage towns to play a more active role, and find better ways to coordinate our opposition. We hope that you will work with us to stop this project as proposed. If so, please return the attached survey and let us know with whom we should work. Thank you in advance for your time and consideration. Signed by Margot Connors of the Sugar Hill Select Board. And in the questionnaire, they have a list of actions that they ask us to respond with whether we have done it, whether we are planning to do this, or if we would like information about how to do this. The first few items have to do with actions that the town has taken officially. One is, the first item is pass a warrant article opposing Northern Pass. We have not done that. I'd like some input from the board as far as, you know, what do you think we should do about this? We have actually taken an official stand against the Northern Pass, but
It would be interesting to know what the townspeople think. I think it would be interesting if we had such a warrant article. I suppose that there might be somebody that's interested in preparing such a thing, submitting it for inclusion in next year's warrant.
and in that case, it would require that it be a petition warrant article.
that would be one idea, I suppose, the board could put such a warrant article. I think I'd rather see it come from, from a petition warrant article myself.
I think
I know there are people that might be interested in doing that.
And perhaps we could tell them that we would like information on how they did it and provide that to...
That would be helpful. As I was rethinking, as Mike was talking, the language that we used when we as a select board put out where we were on this issue, I think it would be helpful if it actually came from the citizens thing. They already know where the select board is on this subject. I agree with Mike. It would be nice if we had something that came from the bottom up, and perhaps as a piece of helping with that, if we could do what you said, Val, get that information from Sugar Hill about how they went about it. I also am encouraged that someone is willing to step up and try to perform some type of aggregation of all this information, because right now you just got X number of towns that are independently trying to act against this thing.
Right. All right. The next item is to create a town committee on Northern Pass. Do you think that is something that...
It's a little premature at this stage, as far as we're concerned. I like the idea of a petition warrant article, and then based on that, we could go beyond it. I don't know what a committee would accomplish.
We have met with our state legislatures, we have met with the governor, we have sponsored information meetings about the Northern Pass with both the Northern Pass people coming to the town hall, and there have been a couple of other information meetings at the schools. We have not passed a warrant article banning HVDC towers within the town, and I'm not sure that that is something that can be effective unless...
Well, I think that petition warrant article that was brought in here at our last meeting addresses that to some extent. I don't recall exactly what it says, but I think the idea of that is to prohibit certain developments within the town. I think it would include these kinds of lines.
Right, but I think without that happening, this is a meaningless thing to even address.
I don't know if you can just specifically ban a particular type of structure.
Right.
I mean, it might be an element of a zoning ordinance or some such thing, but I think that would be a little bit over the top to say we're just going to, simply prohibit a particular type of facility, or try to.
Under grassroots action, it lists create an organization for opposing Northern Pass. That certainly exists in Plymouth at the grassroots level. That group has certainly encouraged residents and businesses to post signs or orange ribbons. As far as marching in the local parade, no, I don't, that has not been. But there have been Northern Pass information booths at local fairs or events. Explanatory racks in local businesses, I don't believe that has been done, but I know that our grassroots group has been lobbying state reps and state senators in opposition to the Northern Pass. And I think that the key one is here at the bottom. They talk about coordination with other groups, including cooperative efforts with other towns, and I think, as you said, that would be something that I would certainly ask them for additional information on how they would propose to do that. It sounds like Sugar Hill is interested in taking the lead on this. And as far as cooperative efforts with other groups, I know that our local grassroots opponents are all involved, pretty widespread. I think they're working together pretty strongly.
A lot of very active people out there on this, that's for sure.
Right. And then, yes.
I'd suggest that we ask Janie Forrester to come in. She's gotten pretty aggressive with this Northern Pass since the legislature. They just passed a bill related to eminent domain, and she's not happy with the way it was written, and she's trying to stiffen the back, so to speak. Because the other issue that we have to look at, I think, as a group, is the possibility of burying these lines, which is becoming more and more feasible. There seems to be an effort on the part of the utility to avoid burying the lines because the right-of-ways are owned by the state and railroads, where the current, most of what they're trying to accomplish now is on right-of-ways that they already own.
Somebody raised an interesting point, it was you, I think, who talked about burying them down the median strip on the interstate, and that would do two things. It would give all the revenue from it to the state instead of to PSNH.
Yeah.
Because right now, they're pushing to put it on PSNH's lines, so PSNH
Well,
can
there's a
gain
lot of
profits.
money involved in the right-of-ways that PSNH already owns for the towers. And if it went to the interstates, and they've also talked about a combination of interstate and the railroads, that revenue would not go to PSNH.
I think it's worth noting that in the cover letter that came with this questionnaire, they do talk about working with us to stop this project as proposed. So I think they're a group that is also interested in just looking at alternate ways to get it accomplished.
Val, I wonder if at the bottom, under that last comment of other, the idea of ensuring that, in the case of the select board, that we continue to avail ourselves, not only of the meetings, but there are a number of technology forums that have been established to communicate information as things unfold, a combination of websites, email, even Facebook's being used now. I just think that needs to be mentioned because that's a modern way of staying on top of events as they're unfolding and making sure you're tuned to the latest information. I think that needs to get mentioned. I don't see that anywhere up here.
So how would you word it? I agree, but you said it very well.
It's something to the fact of just ensuring that the select board avails themselves of all of the modern communication tools like email, Facebook, and blogs to stay in touch with events that are unfolding around this. I'm not sure that everybody along this whole corridor is tuned in to those vehicles of communicating.
And they will be, social media. Is there a website?
Oh, several. Several.
Several websites, and then Facebook has something new coming up on it. Not Facebook, but YouTube is another one where there's a lot that's on it. They also asked to indicate any joint activities we feel would be worth pursuing. Visibility along I-93 and other major highways near Northern Pass. I'm sure they're talking about putting out signs.
So those great big balloons.
Right. Anything else to add to that? No, we can take copies of the record and return this to them. And move on to Chairman's comments. Last week, we learned of persons who were planning to come to the PSU campus carrying firearms, and they stated that their purpose was to make a statement and distribute information. The PSU administration worked with our police department, our fire and rescue department, the PSU police, state police, Grafton County Sheriff's Department, Homeland Security, and other federal authorities, as well as the emergency management teams of both the town and PSU on a coordinated response to this. I can't provide you with details concerning the logistics, but I can say that this was treated seriously and was handled very professionally. You may have seen on the news that as a result of a restraining order obtained by PSU, the individuals did not bring firearms to campus. They did distribute literature and spoke to those present, but no negative incident took place. Thank you to all of our law enforcement and emergency personnel who worked on this incident, and to our citizens and PSUs for remaining calm throughout. One additional comment, going back to Saturday, December 3rd, when power was lost throughout the area as a result of a tree cutting mishap. We've had inquiries from a number of people about claims for loss of business or loss of property during that power failure, and just want people to be aware that the New Hampshire Electric Cooperative is accepting claims for losses of any kinds, including perishable food that might have gone bad in people's freezers, or a business lost if you have a business in town, or any other kind of loss. I think they're pursuing a class action suit against the individual who caused the power failure. So the electric co-op is the place to go. I'm sorry, Mr. Wood, I don't know if they'll cover that one. Moving on to committee reports. Dick?
Don't have anything.
I don't have anything either.
I have nothing. I've got a campus community council meeting tomorrow. Ray?
We did not have a planning board meeting earlier this month. We do have one this coming Thursday night. It's a very limited agenda. Essentially, it's a merger of two parcels, so it should be a short meeting. The activity at the planning board level continues to be very low. The Chamber of Commerce did have their regular monthly board meeting this past Friday, and I will be distributing to everyone a very helpful document that was put together by the Chamber in partnership with a co-op student from the university on looking at the composition of the membership of the Chamber to get a sense of what various classes actually compose that organization. And not surprising, the greatest number was nonprofit organizations, as you might expect to see from our region around here. It was also helpful to see from the standpoint of full-time employees, the three largest employers in our region, and Walmart was actually number 3. Of course, the first was the university, and then, of course, it was Spear Hospital, but then Walmart showed up number 3. It's interesting to take a look at that. It's going to help them to target their continued growth that they're looking for. It's a very useful tool because it's also all visual, it's all graphical. But I'll circulate that. I got approval from the board to circulate that to everybody, with the sense it is public information. So I think you'll find it helpful, especially when you think about our tax base. When you look at this, you get a sense that just reinforces what we're always saying about our tax base.
Thank you. Charlie?
I attended the school board meeting on the 5th. I reported to them that we had set the tax rate and what it was, and also that we had taken $125,000 out of the unassigned reserve to bring the town tax to a zero increase. And it was also offset by a deferred payment from the school district that we had them move into this year to bring the revenues up to the level that we could keep the tax rate the same. They gave me some information on their budgeting process, and we can go over that. I gave a copy of it to Paul to look at, but it went well. They're now aware of the fact that the chase is ended, and that the increase of $1 change is going to show up next year on the school district, but not the town. Other than that, I have nothing.
If I may, I completely forgot about the Conservation Commission meeting that I went to last Tuesday evening. They are continuing to do outreach with the students at PSU, primarily sort of the geography club and some of the other organizations over there, and continue to do some good work on the trail maintenance and improvements at their various properties. And then they're also looking at some additional potential conservation easements that would appear initially to be some good additions to the community as far as protecting land and joining up with already protected property. So, and there are also sort of ongoing issues with some of the sort of security and any vandalism, dumping up at the parking lot on Texas Hill or on Hebron Road. So they're continuing to work with that. Obviously, sort of any potential dumping usually drops off in the wintertime, but they're continuing to do some improvements and just trying to monitor that as best as possible.
That has been a problem in the past.
Yeah.
Under new business, Juliet, memo of understanding between Plymouth and Ashland for PB Cam to tape the Ashland Selectboard meetings. Yep.
Yes, so we're going to be taping Ashland Select Board meetings, 2 a month, just the regular meetings, and it's at an hourly basis at about 2 hours. We'll be voting on it, I guess. And I'm not aware of all the details of that, but I submitted this memo, and I guess as soon as they sign it, we'll start taking it on Channel 3.
Okay. And I see that they charge, the fee is $30 an hour. Is that the same as our charges to other towns?
We don't have any other towns that we take.
The one that we take, but I guess we loan our equipment to a couple of other towns to do their own recording, do we not? I know Dorchester was doing it at one time.
I believe that there's nothing formal about that. I've never seen anything formal. I think they were borrowing it and doing it as a personal, just borrowing for a private borrowing of it. So it's not official. This is Channel 3, so
Now, this is going to be taped, right? It's not live. We'll tape it and edit it and then show it over the PB Cam.
right, not live.
Do we need to take a vote on this?
I guess just one question, if I may. Has this memo been reviewed by town attorney or just been vetted?
As far as I know, Paul Branston from Ashland said that he was going to run it by his lawyer. Yeah. Okay. I don't know.
Okay.
It has been.
It has been, okay.
I have one other additional question. As we take a vote on this, should we specify who's going to be authorized to sign on behalf of the Select Board, just to make sure that's in the motion, since the document only has one signature location?
Sure, we can do that.
Well, I'll move that the Select Board approve the memorandum of understanding between Plymouth and the town of Ashland, with the understanding that the board chair is authorized to sign on behalf of the entire Select Board.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved by Ray and seconded by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that is approved. Next on our agenda, we have Smith Street discussion. Mr. Hope?
Thank you. Well, I want to thank the board for taking time to review some of these issues. Hopefully you've read some of the documentation that I've sent. And so I don't know if it makes sense for me to talk about some of the things in those documents, or if it makes sense for you folks to talk about some things, or I don't know where to start.
Well, I think it might be a good idea if we could perhaps just ask you to summarize, because we've all read them and they were pretty extensive documents. They were the attachments to the emails that we all received and went into a lot of history. So if you could give us a quick summary, and just for the purpose of having the public here understand what the issues are.
Sure. So in 2008, I had written up basically a list of issues concerning Smith Street. Everything from simple things concerning road signage to pavement conditions and erosion, and the lack of a crosswalk at the intersection of Smith and Highland Street. And at the time, the town did undertake some of the smaller items. They replaced the street sign with a reflective one. They installed a dead-end sign to stop traffic from coming in unnecessarily to the portion of the street. But some of the more expensive items were not done for reasons that are understandable due to budget concerns and whatnot. It had been brought to my attention in terms of raising issues of the crosswalk that in order to put a crosswalk at the intersection of Highland Street and Smith Street, that it would need to satisfy American with Disability Act guidelines, and that includes the addition of ramps so that if you're using a wheelchair, you'd be able to navigate the intersection, even though there's no real sidewalk at Smith Street. And so, in 2009, the Highway Safety Board approved or recommended that a crosswalk be installed, and subsequently I've been trying to follow up to see when or if there have been movement to try and make that happen in terms of, is there room to install ramps, is there right of way that needs to be acquired, and what, if anything, has been done to do that sort of thing. Smith Street's the only street that does not have a crosswalk across Highland Street. All the other streets, to my knowledge, have crosswalks across Smith Street, and there are a number of folks, families, and et cetera, that live on Smith Street that do cross the Highland to use the sidewalks. So one of the reasons for some of the documents I sent was to try and figure out what is being done, if anything, on that, and if there's any kind of a timetable associated with putting a crosswalk in. And then the other things that I've talked about in the documents have to do with pavement conditions. It's an experience to drive Smith Street, particularly in the wintertime. There's not a lot of drainage on Smith Street, and that contributes to some of the situation. Typically, it's not uncommon for me when I'm driving to try and drive on the wrong side of the road to try and avoid some of the potholes and other strange protrusions from the roadway surface. And so that's one issue that's been sort of ongoing since I lived on the street in 2004. The intersection at Highland and Smith is such that it suffers from a lot of pavement erosion because of the poor drainage. If you have a front-wheel drive vehicle and you're going to push on the gas to enter into Highland Street, there's a lot of times a lot of silt and small stones and whatnot that cause you to sort of spin out if you're not careful with what you're doing. And I know the town has done their best in terms of doing patch work, and I know that the highway department out there very recently doing some patch work, but there's only so much patch work that can be done to really sort of solve that issue. So that's that's something that needs to be addressed at some point in a more permanent way. And then lastly is some of the work that's happening in front of my property, 38 Smith Street, the drainage issue where basically you've got water coming from the dirt section of Smith Street all the way from the fire hydrant, all sorts of kind of pools right in front of the two homes there, and really doesn't have anywhere suitable to go. My property happens to be a low spot, so it has entered my front yard on occasions, entered my driveway on occasions, it's entered my side yard on occasions, and again, I'll give the town highway department credit. They've tried to do the best they can with the resources they've been provided to try and mitigate the situation, to try and stop the ponding that's happened. The ponding in some places has been the size of a vehicle. But the issue is that the drainage solutions that have been sort of these stopgap measures have been sort of just draining the stormwater runoff onto my property. That's been causing other issues, both inside my home and outside my home, with water ponding in other sections of the property. In one case, a tree that is sort of in the right of way of where this water is flowing came down because there's just too much water from all this stormwater runoff from the road. Thankfully, the tree was in the woods and didn't do any damage, but certainly there are other trees that are closer to this area that could potentially be damaged. So, I recognize that these things take time to budget for and to resolve. So, what I'm really looking to see is some sort of a planning or timetable. And again, I'm not well versed in how the board operates in these sorts of things, so I look to you as sort of the experts. But just to try and get some idea as to when or if something might be done in the future. I was closed by saying that I did also mention that the street light at the corner of Smith and Highland Street, there isn't a street light at that corner. I mentioned to a member of the street lighting committee the other day, I said, well, has anybody mentioned this to you? Because again, this was in the original 2008 report. And he said, no, it was not really brought to their attention, the fact that it is sort of a dark intersection. And so, again, it's street lighting is, I know, expensive. I know it's expensive to run and maintain. I don't know if moving existing street lighting to sort of make that intersection a little bit brighter. It's plagued by lots of big trees in the vicinity. And so that's an issue that makes it challenging to see. I've had visitors that have come and missed my street because they can't see it at night. So it is a challenge. In fact, I think at one point when I was talking to the highway committee and Tammy Hill, who used to chair the committee, I think she said she thought it was a driveway at one point. She didn't realize it was a street. So I'm trying to make the place a safer place for everybody and try and improve conditions as best we can. And I'm looking to the select board for guidance.
I've got to say that the select board typically turns to our highway department manager for the answers to questions concerning the roads in the town, so I would ask Peter to please give us a picture of what you see as what the plan is for Smith Street.
As far as the crosswalk goes, I've looked at that over and over again, and I do not recommend the crosswalk there. Because the amount of school traffic that comes out of the school under direction of the crossing guard, putting the crosswalk there and putting people in the crosswalk would just add congestion to that area. There is a crosswalk if you go over to Reservoir Road and then walk down, which is a little bit out of the way, but there is a crosswalk available for anybody who wants to use it. Now, Smith Street is a low-volume road. There's mostly residential neighborhood. It's a dead end, and if you go up to Smith Ave, then you can exit back onto Reservoir Road. The condition of the roadway is safe, but it is needing a replacement. The replacement, I was hoping that the Water and Sewer Department would take the lead because they want to put in a new sewer line. After the sewer line was constructed, I was going to review the elevations and look at the drainage and apply additional drainage if I had to, or use existing swales with, in cooperation with the water and sewer department to improve the drainage. As far as the area up by Brendan's house, most of the water ponding was created by him paving his driveway. His driveway is actually, a portion of it is actually in the town right of way, and when he paved it, he actually deleted the natural swell of the water that the water runs. I do have some documentation that shows this, if the board would like to look at it. Notice the street is on the lawn, and if you see Mr. Hooch's property, the driveway is actually set back probably 15 or 20 feet.
So is his property the one that says house and back on it? Is that?
Yes.
Lot 1. Lot 1.
And if you look at the driveway, and you look at the town right away, you can clearly see that by paving this driveway, he created part of his own problem.
Is the driveway higher than the...
I did take some pictures. The way that we tried to repair and resolve the situation, as we approach from Highland Street and go to Raymond's driveway, it actually starts to decline in front of Raymond's driveway. If I put the dirt back in front of his driveway, the water will run in his driveway. If I remove the dirt to try to eliminate the water, to go past his driveway, then there's a bump to go in his driveway and a bump to exit the pavement. I do have those pictures here. Now, if you pretty much look at, you can almost see the line of the pavement. Now, I'd like to also draw your attention.
Peter, if I may, are we looking at the end of the driveway?
Yes.
And okay.
Yes, sir.
So there's dirt.
There's some.
Yeah, there's the end of
With
the
the
pavement
dirt.
there.
Okay.
So it's pavement, dirt, paved driveway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if I remove the dirt in front of his driveway, the water will flow past his driveway to go to where the original drainage should be. By him paving his driveway, he's created a problem here that I have no place to put the water. Now, while you're looking at those pictures, I'd also like to point out that the fire hydrant that you can see is actually more or less the town right away. And you can see how that impacts the road.
Just the same thing.
Slightly different.
So, Peter, if I'm going to ask you essentially the same question again, I think, but is the driveway paving raise the surface level of the area between the road and the house? Is that, and so the water stays on both sides and it doesn't flow down the way it did before, is that?
That's correct. When he paved the driveway, he actually blocked the natural way of the water to escape from the road.
And where did it run before? Down toward?
At the corner of his driveway,
Yes.
if you go past his house, there's a culvert and an indentation in the land, and that's where the water used to run.
Oh, I saw the culvert on the plan over here, didn't I?
Yeah.
The entrance of the culvert is actually the other boundary of the town property. So there was actually a naturally created swell that would allow the water to go past his home and exit the roadway.
So in other words, it would come, what
To
direction?
the pyramid.
It would, we have lot 2 on this, so it would come from the area of lot 2,
Exactly.
past lot 1, into the culvert.
Past the driveway and then exit.
Mhm. So now it's stopping over here.
And it's stopping. And obviously, to try to remove the water, I have to dig down into the unpaved portion, which creates a bump in front of his driveway, and a bump at the end of the paved.
Would a culvert under the driveway solve the problem? If someone were to put one there?
It would probably solve the problem, but the ideal situation would be to recreate a swale at the end of the driveway, so the water would naturally go down into to what belongs.
But you said that would create a dip going into the driveway, right?
Yeah, somewhat of a, just a small swell, not an excessive.
Could that be done with paving?
Imagine that you've taken up a portion that's there now.
So the pavement
also
could dip down and
sounds-
come back up.
That part of this problem sounds like a problem that is not created by the town. It sounds like a...
That's good.
Let me respond to some of the things. I'll start with the crosswalk first. I think that the highway manager is absolutely correct, that if you're walking to school, that the proposed pedestrian route should be to walk down from Smith Street to Smith Avenue and over the Reservoir Road to use an existing crosswalk and a crossing guard there. The issue is that not everybody walks to school. I think a lot of people would like to walk downtown. Certainly there's a kind of youth center downtown for children. I work at Plymouth State University and I walk to work every now and then. I think it's unusual to walk a block out of your way to do a crosswalk. The Highway Advisory Committee back in 2009 talked about this, and the police chief recommended that a crosswalk should be there. Again, you've got people crossing at that intersection whether you like it or not. School kids do cross at that intersection whether you like it or not. And the reality is that there are crosswalks at all the other streets, and so if you're a driver, you're expecting to see pedestrians at these crosswalks at these other intersections, but you're not expecting to see them at Smith Street because there is no crosswalk. As the highway manager said, it's a low volume street, so you're not going to have a high volume of pedestrians, but you are going to have occasional pedestrians there. My personal feeling is I don't know if you need, I understand you need to obey the law with regards to ADA ramps, but I'm just looking for some white paint on the street in terms of being able to paint a crosswalk to at least give some drivers some visibility. We all know that there's speed issues on Highland Street. That's not anything new. So, I think that it's kind of unusual for a pedestrian to walk a block out of their way to cross the street if you're going in a certain direction. Let me speak to the driveway. I paved the driveway a few years ago. I don't remember the exact year. The reason I paved the driveway is because the runoff from the town road was entering the driveway. It was a gravel driveway. If you look at the report from 2008 that I provided to you by email, you can see the erosion that was taking place. So the dirt was, in fact, from the road surface entering the driveway during mud season and during other high times of high rainwater runoff. The water would be just all over, and you'd get out of your car and you'd be stepping in puddles all over the driveway. And so it really was detracting from the value of the property. I used Bryant Paving to do the paving job. They're a company that has done other work in town. And I said to them, I said, look, I don't know what we can do about this, but it's the idea is to try and get a cleaner surface. And so I'll admit I paved the driveway as part of the ownership, but the reality is if you look, this is the tax map, and my property is highlighted there. So I don't see on that map where the town land starts. The water, as I said, it goes from the fire hydrant. The runoff goes from that fire hydrant all the way to the top of to the end of the dead end, and it ends up in front of my property. The water really has nowhere to go but onto my property. And so because of all this extended runoff, it's going onto the side there and causing additional runoff into the property, so I'm getting flooding in my rear yard because it ends up being a flat spot. If you look on that tax map, on lot 45 and 46, they're sort of behind me, and if you go and look at those properties, they have their own issues with drainage, but the problem is that what they've done is altered their property such to deal with some of the drainage because of this runoff from this upper portion of Smith Street. And I just don't understand why, if the town wants to abate some of the situation in terms of the drainage, whether it be through a property tax situation or abating some of the drainage. There's different ways of trying to solve it. But, right now, there's no town property, as I understand it, that the road has ever drained onto. It's always been onto personal property.
So is the substance of what you're trying to say there that this water has always come onto your property, whether it was before or after the paving was done?
Yes.
May I add to that? The property in reference is not his property, it's town property. His property is about 15 or 20 feet back from the drainage.
And you can see that the 143.76 is clearly shown on both of these with the 15-foot right-of-way.
And I have one other thing to add. I spoke to Brian in regards to getting a permit to pave, and Brendan never got a permit to pave. And if he had, they could have talked about this drainage problem. The town could have been there to say, this is where the water needs to go, and this is how we can solve the problem. But that was never done. May I?
Yes, please.
Brendan, one of the things that I think that happens with these tax maps is that they're not necessarily surveys. And I think is this a survey plan that was done for somebody? This one? That is an actual tax plan. What is this? This is the tax map, isn't it? Or the tax plan? I don't know if the tax map, where it groups a bunch of properties together, is as accurate as if you go up. So this is also from the town tax records. It's an actual. That is an actual town document. And it looks like this is actually showing pins or monuments of some kind around your lot. So I think what Peter is saying is this area that extends maybe from this 15 feet or so from your property line to the paved section of Smith Street is where the problem has occurred to some extent. That's correct. And I think what he's saying is that you altered what is really town property and caused the problem by doing this without a permit from the town, either the paving permit or actually permission to pave town property. I think that's what we're saying here. And there again, he could have got guidance from the town at the same time, as far as drainage.
I could ask a few questions and then offer an observation. You mentioned that the appropriate way to go about this is to try to coordinate the town's efforts with what may happen with the installation of any of the facilities by water and sewer. And I was curious if you had any feel at all as to what kind of timeline water and sewer might have for when they would be undertaking their effort.
They had originally planned for doing Smith Street or a portion of Smith Street today, but because they had that water main break on Highland Street by Russell Street, that exhausted all their funding. So it is still in the works. They've gone through, they're on their third supervisor within a year. So I'm still trying to coordinate and have a new supervisor to get this project going. Yeah. Peter, do you feel that are you going to be repaving all of Smith Street when they do that? It was my intention to try to go all the way up at the town right away. Whatever the town owns, I believe part of it is dirt now. I'd like to pave all of that.
So there's a chance that the flooding could be mitigated at that point, in addition to fixing the condition of the pavement on the road.
The flooding in front of Brandon's house cannot be mitigated until he raises his driveway. if I pave exactly the way the road should be now, his driveway is lower than the roadway, so the water will go down his driveway. So what I had to do is I had to remove the dirt that created a smooth surface, a smooth transition from the pavement to the dirt portion. I had to remove a portion of that so that the water would not accumulate in front of his driveway and go down his driveway.
No, I'm confused. I hear you saying you need to dig out a portion of what's not paved, which would make it lower.
And I haven't done that.
And I heard you say that he needs to raise his driveway.
He needs to raise his driveway so the water cannot continue to go down it after the road is paved.
So I think, are you saying that not only does the driveway need to be raised, but this thing needs to be cut out?
That's right.
Which wouldn't that make a pretty rough entrance into the, could that be done and still have a relatively smooth, driving experience into the driveway?
Because you would be slowing down to turn into the driveway. So it would be no different than going into the bank parking lot, or it would be no different than going into any other mildly swale area.
The observation that I wanted to offer up is over the last 16 years, I've watched the development finish in the River Ridge subdivision, and depending on which side of the street you happen to be on, all the new development that went in, on one side, it was required that the driveways actually have culverts underneath them, and the property owners had to put those culverts in. On the other side, all the driveways were constructed so that the elevation was just as you described. It ended up in a manner so that water could continue to flow even across the driveway, yet would not go back toward the house. So all the construction was coordinated, and there's probably been 15 houses built in the last 16 years, and there's no drainage problems within that subdivision because of the work the property owners had to do to facilitate the flow of water. And that's the point. The property owners were doing the work. The town wasn't.
And that could happen here too, but there was no knowledge of that getting paid.
Yeah.
Well, it just seems like the solution to it is going to have to come about with a, mutual effort and coordination once the water and sewer district gets their work completed, but nothing can really happen before then. I mean, it doesn't make any sense to put money into it before then. Mr. Wood, do you have something to add?
Well, I lived there for 15 years on Smith Street. My father owned all the land for years and years and years. And then when he decided, when he died, probate court, we had to get rid of the land. So we used to hope about the land, and he was going to put a house in it. But he didn't, and he sold it to a firefighter from Massachusetts. The guy came in and he wanted to put a duplex. Well, the town wasn't allowed to put a duplex, so he put his house and another house. But that area, for years and years and years, has been nothing but a swamp. My father used to throw trees and rocks and everything down in there trying to build it up. But when Dr. Outage redid his street and paved it, all that water comes down off that street and sort of goes towards his property. Now, a lot of it would come around, and there was a little swale there where there was a culvert that went across and took care of it. But then the guy comes in and starts filling in to put the house in, and he puts the foundation in without taking any measurements of where the road was and everything else, and consequently, the road is higher than the top of the foundation, so you could save money on fill. Now, when you buy a house or something, you should look at things like that to see if there's going to be a water problem. That should influence whether you buy or not. The second thing Peter's wrong about is the sewer is already in on Smith Street. They're going to put water in. And they're only going to come up as far as Smith Avenue. So there will be no construction up there on water and sewer. So that won't have an effect on it. I think the only solution is what Peter is talking about, that try to dig something out and try to get, but I don't think it'll ever work. All you can do is put berms to sort of direct the water that's coming out of Mr. Hage's driveway down, try to deflect it sooner before it gets down to the road. But if you do that, you put it on Mr. Berman's house, like, well, his son's wife's house, that white one. You know what I'm talking about, Charlie?
Which one? On Smith Street?
Beside Dr. Hagen's driveway.
I don't think my kids are up there.
Huh?
I don't think the kids,
That's not one of these streets.
Huh?
That's not road.
The person that's on the school board there. Well, that White House is right there. You know who they are?
I don't know.
Harry's on
Well,
Marshall.
well, you used to go on there, and then they filled that up to build a house there. So that house is capable of. But there's a whole mess of swamps up in that area. Up behind Dr. Hage's house is a great big swamp, which you come down through, and before you ever start any work on Smith Street, somebody's gonna have to address that problem. That goes all the way across, down by Gordon Chase's house, and now a lot of that drain off goes into Mr. and Mrs. Well, it used to be Susie Minico, now it's Bruce Williams. It goes into their cellar. So, 100 people probably got problems from that swamps, that it all used to be just farmland. There was one house up there, my father, and it was high enough where it didn't have a water problem. But every time we went down south, there was a full of water. And that was the highest house. So there's natural groundwater there, and I don't know what you can do. You just have to live with it.
Thank you, Mr. Wood.
I wonder what a culvert would do by the looks of it. I don't, the problem with a culvert is it just make it the next door neighbor's problem. If you put a culvert under the driveway.
If you put a culvert under the driveway, you'd have to create a ditch before and after the driveway. And there's no ditch now, it's just,
Basically, what his driveway is just block the water. Yeah, he created his own problem.
If I may respond? First of all, the town highway manager is absolutely right. I did not know that I needed a full permit to install the driveway. I was misinformed by Bryant Paving and called them and asked them for an estimate and asked them to do the work. And I was unaware of the town code. So the ultimate responsibility for that lies on me and my family. So I just put that out there right there. You can accept that. Having said that, if I put the driveway into the setback, I think you're just making a bigger pond. And so if I paved the driveway and done it in, with regards to what the highway manager is suggesting, and not paved the setback, all you're doing is you're increasing the size of the water that would be there. If you look at the original 2008 report that I sent, and you look at the condition of the roadway at that time, you can see that water would accumulate in that area on a regular basis.
I'm going to just interrupt you and say, we can go back to talking about how things were in 2008, but the reality that we have to deal with is how things are today and how we can move forward to improve things, given the challenges that Mr. Wood has also identified. But, again, I think that the answer is going to be when the Plymouth Village Water and Sewer does the work that they have planned to do, is going to be the appropriate time for all parties to attempt to work together to come up with the best possible solution. I don't see what else we can accomplish tonight by going back to things that happened in 2008 or didn't happen in 2008.
I just, Peter, you heard what John said about just coming up to Smith Ave, with water rather than sewer, do you know?
John is correct.
Okay. Now, but despite the fact that they're only coming to Smith Ave, you'd like to go all the way up to the end?
Through the entire town right away. And that road would be completed now.
Do you believe that if Mr. Hawk, is that how you pronounce your name? Hoke. Was, cooperative with you at the time that was done, between the two of you, that you could work something out that would alleviate this problem?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think there could be communication established to try to resolve this problem. The unfortunate part of this whole thing is water runs downhill. And if I pave the roadway, just pave the roadway at existing grade, water's going to go in his yard. So at the time of road improvement, he's going to actually have to elevate his road, his driveway, or create a natural swale to direct the water away from his house. And the other alternative to that would be remove material from the roadway at the expense of the town. So the road is actually lower than the driveway.
Madam Chair, just something that strikes me, and Mr. Wood actually caused me to reflect back on this, but and looking at Dick while I'm saying this, but as I reflect on what we're discussing here and the circumstances of how things evolved over a period of time to the current state of affairs that we're discussing here tonight, I also think about what we've been dealing with for the last several months over off Fairgrounds Road on Page Street, where there are solutions that are being sought from the town to situations that have involved over sometimes a lengthy period of time. Because perhaps standards weren't imposed or regulations weren't adhered to. There's all kinds of factors that have come into play on both Page Street, sounds like here also. But I'm struck with the idea that in the case of Page Street, it really took a significant improvement around that entire area to address the drainage problems along Page Street, and it was at a fairly significant cost. And the town was very fortunate that we had a development that was coming along that was going to help address a lot of those drainage problems on Page Street. But we don't have that type of influence here, so it's got to be a coordinated effort with the various parties, including the property owners. I don't know how the town can be expected to step up and address things on a particular street that have evolved over a period of time, that the town, quite frankly, bore no responsibility for the current conditions, either because it's the natural flow of events out there and the nature of the flow of water itself. It's got to be a coordinated effort from the various parties, and it needs to be a systemic one because of all the things that Peter's spoken to. I don't know that we need to get into that, but my hope is we could leave it with these two individuals that during the course as you've outlined, next year everybody gets together and figure out what's the most effective way to deal with this. And that includes the cost elements associated with it.
I think the other thing is that John Wood said that this has been this way probably for 40 years in a swamp. You bought in a swamp.
May I respond to some of this? The wetlands issue is an issue, but it's been exacerbated by what town highway manager has been doing in terms of trying to put the water into this culvert. This culvert doesn't go anywhere. It just goes and the water just sits. I now have a pond in the yard. I would suggest that, like other streets in Plymouth, that a storm drain might be considered. I'm pretty sure that there's a storm drain on Reservoir Road near the corner of Smith Avenue in front of that property number 43 on that map I provided to you.
Mr. Wood, please don't come on this side of the table. If you'd like,
You want this one?
you can have that.
I would suggest that, my property is only one of several on the street, and I tried to outline that in the most recent report, that there are other properties on the street besides mine that are suffering.
Well, and I think that's part of what Mr. Grosny is saying, is that, if there are other problem areas, then when the work gets done on the street, all of the property owners who are experiencing difficulties probably need to work together on identifying them, one, and working out solutions, two. And you did mention the possibility of doing additional drainage in the road at the time that the repaving does get done after water and sewer is done. So I think we're all talking about the same thing, and I just think right now, there's really not any more discussion is necessary. I think it needs to be between the people who are working on the problems, and I think that you've got the support of the highway manager in trying to resolve this, but it needs to be
I can
coordinated.
put a solution to this, right? I know what can be done to fix it, and it's just a matter of going up there with Peter and looking at it. Now, one time I had to tell Peter we're gonna have a big storm, and I need sandbags along the road so it doesn't come down and travel by my house and go in the cellar. We put them up, no water in my cellar. We take them down, my house, water in the cellar all the time. So it's a big problem everywhere, but we live with it. But what I suggest is, there's a natural swale here, isn't there? Right beside your house where the thing is, it goes down into the main swamp.
Right here.
This,
There's a natural swale right beside the fire
It's
hydrant.
not in this area here, on the adjacent
It
property.
goes in there. Now, where Mr. Hage's road comes down, all we do is put a speed bump across the road to where that will filter down into that area and disappear. Paint it so people don't run over it, and you could put one more speed bump down further, and if we put asphalt bumpers along the side of Reservoir Road, and just fill up a little bit, put grass in there, I think the whole thing will be solved. Because the big problem is all the rain coming down from Hage's property on the Smith Street. It's gotta go somewhere. So divert it towards that runoff area, and there's no problem.
Thank you, sir.
It'll be $2,000 consulting fee.
send a bill.
Please. I think there really isn't anything further to discuss on this unless you have something different to add.
Well, again, I still have yet to get a sort of timetable for the crosswalk, and whether or not that is something the select board wishes to pursue.
I do not recommend a crosswalk at all.
And that recommendation has come, I mean, we've had that discussion
I have a comment about it.
repeatedly.
Mr. Holt said that the chief of police recommended this. I think I was on the committee meeting when the chief specifically, he didn't recommend it. He just said, this is what has to be done. And that was before the ADA thing. But I don't think the chief recommended a crosswalk.
In regards to crosswalks, Cooper Street doesn't have a crosswalk.
Well, there's too damn many crosswalks on Plymouth Street.
I would offer perhaps one of the things that we could at least put on our agenda is to have this subject come back in front of us in late spring, just to see where things are and how they progress. I'm going to suggest at the end of May, perhaps, that last meeting in May, that we could hear back about either what has happened or what is perhaps going to happen during the construction season, just to stay in tune with it.
And I'd also like to get, just to revisit the, what the recommendations actually were about the crosswalk, rather than just sit here and speculate about what we think somebody said or didn't say. I'd rather have the record.
Was this the safety committee?
Yeah.
Would there be minutes of the safety committee meeting?
It's in the 2009 report, so you can read it.
Okay. Well, let's, maybe we can take a look at that.
Just as far as the work by the water and sewer, at what point in time in the year, I mean, are we coming up to the point when they make their capital decisions for the next construction season?
Yeah, I think this is already on there. I mean, this is already one of the things that they've said as a priority, and they
They
just,
got bumped because of the Highland
because of the Highland Street issues, right? Exactly.
On the crosswalk. When they do the water line that's going down through there and straight to the shore, they're gonna go across Highland, I believe. That would be a good time to put a blinking yellow light that blink only when you're going to school or you're coming out. That way you don't need a crosswalk. You don't need a fancy one, because you got a warning there and you got a sign crosswalk. And it would be safe. I'm just throwing out an idea to save the town money, that's all.
Thank you, sir. But,
Thank you for your time.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I don't see Larry Cohen here, but he was coming in to discuss the power outage that occurred on December 3rd, and we've talked about that. Hopefully he's listening and knows that he can get help. And finally, the Plymouth Health Program, once again, needs donations of propane, oil, and wood. If anybody is able to assist in those ways, please give a call to the town hall if you can help.
And I've been noticing up at the recycling center, there's been a lot of pallets coming in, hardwood. Would it be feasible enough to cut those up with a chainsaw into sizes that would fit a stove and put them up there, and I'll give them to this help organization, because that's a lot of good valuable that we just burn up there, you know?
That may be, we can look into that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I know we used pallets to have the bonfire at the holiday festival on December 3rd, and those burned real good.
They do.
So, all right. Moving on to other business, we have the Bridgewater ambulance contract. Essentially, just as we have done with Ashland and Holderness, Bridgewater has requested to enter a 3-year contract with the town instead of a 1-year contract. And the terms of it would simply be the current rate that they are serving extended out over a 3-year period instead of a 1-year period. So the contract would, the duration of the agreement would go from January 1st of 2012 until December 31st, 2014, instead of 2012, that is, as it was previously written. Everything else remains the same. Any discussion about that?
I think it's a great, good opportunity again to add the confidence into what we're going to have in the way of relationships, so I believe we ought to approve it.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Ray and seconded by Dick. All those in favor of a 3-year contract with Bridgewater for the ambulance service?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That is approved. And finally, under unfinished business, we have discussion on scheduling the town meeting, the date, time, and location. We did take a vote at our last meeting to have the town meeting on the Saturday following Election Day at 6 o'clock in the evening. The feedback we've gotten on that has come in both directions, but my recommendation is that we stay with the time that we previously established. Does anyone wish to revisit that, or?
Is it the same time as we currently have on Wednesday?
We usually have it at 7 on Wednesday, but we moved it back to 6. We also did identify that daylight savings time will have started by the time town meeting rolls around, so that there'll be not only will it be getting lighter because it's March, it'll be an hour later of lightness because of the time change. So
What's the date?
17th.
17th of March.
I continue to believe that it's the best balance point from all the interested parties that we've heard from. That there's no good solution, but I think it's a good balance point.
I'd say, my feeling about it is there's no perfect solution, but it's a good compromise. I think it gets it to Saturday, it gets a little earlier in the day, and I'm still concerned that a lot of people around here work during the day on Saturday, and I think that would prevent a lot of them from coming in the morning, which is the counter push we've got, is start first thing in the morning. And I think there are too many people that work on Saturday to make that feasible for them.
While I understand that it might be an inconvenience for our senior citizens, they aren't prohibited from being there in the evening, whereas somebody with a job may be just unable to come, period.
I support your suggestion, since we did hear a concern being raised about that we do, as you suggested, make an extra effort this year to make sure we, communicate that there is available transportation that they can take advantage of going to and fro if they're concerned about getting to and from that meeting.
Just also important to note that I think as we've all recognized that this is sort of a test case a little bit, so that if some adjustment needs to be made in 2013, we'll address that.
All right, so we will not reopen that, we'll just consider that vote as stand as is. Do we have any public comment this evening?
Now, I'll go along this here, I hope I can remember all of them. Now, this is nothing personal with any selectman, okay? Concerning Northern Pass, I know you all came out against it, but that is not necessarily what the community thinks. We don't know. So I would say, if the selectmen put an article, or an article, and you wrote it yourself, it would not be prejudiced one way or the other. If you let a special group come in, they're going to have special wording. If you let the other side, it's going to be special wording. If you make it up and it's neutral, then the people can vote whatever way they want. And it might be 50 votes, it might be 20 votes, you don't know. But then you get something to work with. I know all 5 of you are against it, but I'm not personal, I don't care one way or the other. And a lot of people in town feel that way. So it should be against, for, or non-committal. Then you know. Then nobody can hold you responsible for one way or the other. The other thing with Northern Pass, I saw in the paper that the railroad is supposed to try, is thinking about coming down the old abandoned railroad route into Plymouth. Now that would be a good place to bury the lines all along this corridor, and then you would see it. But nobody's thought of that yet.
Can I just make one correction? I've not taken a position on the project. So it's
You're a
for...
smart man. You're a smart man. You must work on something.
Yes, it is.
Okay, the parade. I happen to go to basketball games, and when there's a hockey game and a basketball game at the same time, and they get out, and I realized the power was off, and there was all kinds of problems. But the staging area where it comes out is the basketball and hockey was getting out at the same time. And all kinds of people were pulling up, and then they're pulling right out in the other lane to go back and go on 93. How do we solve the problem? Well, I showed Paul and a few other people I showed. Way back in the old days, the parade used to come up South Main, go around where the common is, and then disband. There wasn't very big parade back then. But if we started, and the road was paved down by the skate rink, and you go all the way back and have that, your staging area all the way back to the senior center. That's a big area in there. Staging area there, come down through the skate park and up Main Street, up and around, and then you go around the common and go up Russell Street, disband and go down. Now, I know you're going to say a lot of businesses would be open and everything else, but this could be presented as an informational thing to the businesses and everything else. Would this work? Should we try it at a Veterans Day parade or something like that? But we got to do something. I mean, it just ties up the whole town. And if it was a different staging area, at least the people could get out of the college facilities and go up and go around the roundabout and get the hell out of town. So it's something to think about, right? It's not cast in stone, it's just a suggestion, we got to do something.
And that's going to require some coordination with a few different organizations, but appreciate the suggestion.
If you could have seen the mess, and you're sitting in a car there trying to go somewhere, and, hey, it's Christmas tree, so you got to show a little face, but, you know, what I'm concerned about is the accidents that were going to occur when somebody's coming over the bridge, and that car turns out in front of him, doesn't see him, boom, who's responsible for that? What else? I hope there's a little more money for pay here if we're going to add Ashland. Is that flexible, a little more flexible?
Well, one of the things that this will probably bring about is a connection from Ashland to PB Cam here with, when we negotiate with Time Warner, this sort of changes. I think Holderness and Ashland might be better served if we did accommodate live broadcast and then let them pay their franchise fee to maintain the service. PSU, they're already interested in a live connection, and of course we've never been paid any franchise fees for that, but that has nothing to do with PSU, that's Time Warner.
So that, the answer is maybe.
Yeah, that'd be part of the negotiations, John.
We'll have to,
The only other thing I have to say is, I cannot say enough about the work Peter's done up on Smith Street, because every time I've had a concern about even the littlest thing, he at least listens. I know because of his budget is so low that he can't do a lot of things, but at least he's trying. And at the end of the street, he did come up and patch all the holes and everything else, and I only had to talk to him twice about it. Well, he's doing a good job, he's getting paid. As far as you on Smith Street, I've lived there for 60 years, and it's always been a problem, and it's always going to be a problem, and don't think the town's working against you, because they're not. They're trying to help you out just as much as they were always trying to help me out and everything. So, we can resolve it, but it's just going to take a little time. And if I can meet up there with Peter and you, I think between the three of us, we've got enough brains to figure out something. But you need more than one person to do it. Because you're angry, he hasn't got money, and I don't care.
thank you, Mr. Wood. Do we have any other public comment tonight? All right, that being the case, this meeting is adjourned.